And welcome into yet another episode of Shooting the Breeze. I'm Samir Kumar, joined with Tim Mohop in Nebraska. Man, Tim, you're not missing much out here in New York. Yesterday it was a beautiful, nice little 90-degree day, start of October. I was like, let's go. I want a little bit of warmth to stick around longer. And now it's in the 40s today, man. Like, what is this?
Oh man, I'll tell you this. I mean, I know we're not going to have the same weather patterns each and every day or each and every week, but being further west and the weather going west to east, contrary to your boy Kyrie's opinion, sometimes I don't know. I'm slandering Kyrie to start the podcast.
Oh, that's not a good start.
No, but I think generally speaking, we get your weather maybe a day beforehand because it was. Maybe not a day, but a couple days ago it was real hot and muggy here in Nebraska, and then now all of a sudden it's fall. Like summer just disappeared in thin air. It was 90 degrees just the other day, and now there's not supposed to be another day above 70. I'd say 75 in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and probably not until next spring. So, if not summer. So no, I can relate. I know we're officially in fall now here. Everything outside still thinks it's summer. There's leaves on all the trees. None of the leaves have really changed too much yet, and my allergies are still killing me. So everyone still thinks it's summertime here in Nebraska, but it's literally overnight has turned into fall. We're looking at a nice 60, 70 degrees and sunny for the next 2 weeks, it looks like here. So a lot of time to sit outside and enjoy, maybe listen to some radio streams of playoff baseball. The NHL's getting going. The football season's underway, even though my team is making me think bad thoughts and go to dark places. So I'm looking forward to mostly playoff baseball because that's probably the most optimistic of my favorite teams. That's probably the most chance I have it's joy. Whereas the rest of my favorite teams are all causing me pain and misery. So we'll find out.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the Brooklyn Nets, obviously. That's been well covered throughout the summer after years of misery on that front. But the Giants, in their own ways are starting to turn it around a little bit. Still work that needs to be done, but a lot better than it's been looking for the past few years. I think, things are starting to finally look up on that front. But, with the weather as well, last night, I'll tell you this, I went to bed normally, however, windows cracked open, fan going. All of a sudden, in the middle of the night, I felt the cold just starting to creep in. I'm like, oh, wow, I need to really, bundle up a little bit, maybe close the window, turn off the fan, because all of a sudden, it went from muggy, kind of humid to freezing cold. So
winter is coming, and it's already here.
Other news, not really weather-related. We were hit in New York media, with kind of a thunderbolt here. I don't know. That's just a play on words here. I'm sorry. I'm not good with that kind of stuff right now. Just a little disclaimer. That could be on your blooper reel.
It works with the Mets. They got Thor over there. I get it. Noah Syndergaard swung his mighty hammer, and the Mets made a decision today.
Well, if you live under a rock, to all my fellow listeners out there, I know there are plenty, and there'll be more plenty. Appreciate you guys. The Mets have fired Mickey Callaway.
Yep. Well, rejoicing can be heard all the way out here in Nebraska from New York. We can hear the cheers.
All my Mets fan friends, all over Twitter, all over social media, are rejoicing that they got rid of the one and only, as far as we know, Mickey Callaway. And you know what? If I was a Mets fan, I'd be happy too. This guy has been nothing but just flat out horrible his first 2 years, or his only 2 years with the Mets. The way he talks to the media, he doesn't handle the media very well in New York. He threatened a reporter. He should have been fired right after that. There should have been no place for what he did with the media. And not only that, just overall, he just has no clue about managing. I'm sure Met fans can explain better than I, but, he's just been horrible. So I'm happy he's gone for the Mets fans' sake.
I think, this is a long time coming. You want to give a young manager some time. You want to let things play out just in case. I get that from the Mets side of things. And, it was kind of the all-out push at the trade deadline that for the first few weeks into August looked pretty good for the Mets. Maybe there's a chance that Mickey and co. can save the season and maybe, of course, Mickey's job. And it, ultimately fell a little bit short of expectations. Still, the Mets finished better than they were on track for after getting Marcus Stroman and keeping some of the pieces that had been rumored to have been trade pieces. But at the end of the day, it's something like you said. It just appeared that Mickey Callaway was not ready for that job, that responsibility in that market. I'll give him at least to his side, not to defend some of the things you mentioned there, Samir, but I will say, as far as new manager roles and taking on your first manager role at the MLB level in New York, that's got to be one of the most daunting challenges, period.
Absolutely.
But obviously, Mickey did not handle it all that well. Even in-game, you'll talk to Mets fans that'll tell you all kinds of things, whether it's lineup decisions, whether it's pulling pitchers too early, whether it's trotting out the same bullpen rotation, an order of things that was not working this year. It took too long to get Edwin Diaz out of the closer role. All season long, there was just no shortage of complaints with the job that Mickey Callaway had done. And, as a result, it's an unforgiving market to begin with. And when you have your GM buying in at the deadline, trying to make a playoff push, and you're not able to finish the deal there, it's in this town and in most baseball markets and in most professional sports markets, it's just going to have you on the outs. And then certainly Mickey Callaway taking a seat here and we'll have to resume baseball activities somewhere else. And I think, it's the same thing I say about other situations in life. It's a learning experience, and wherever he goes, he'll probably take a limited role or a lesser role. But for the Mets now, it's about the future and looking ahead to see what they can do to maximize what should be a better roster than they've seen in the last couple seasons.
Absolutely. You put it well, very well there, my friend. About Mickey Callaway as well. I don't think there's managing in his future. I don't think he could be a manager again at the major league level. He just doesn't have the thick skin. He doesn't have the leadership abilities, and he doesn't have just an all-around knowledge of the game that other managers possess. So I think if he comes back into an organization, it's best served that he goes back to his pitching coach role, much like he did with the Cleveland Indians. I think that was a much better fit for his talents. But, whenever there's a firing, there's always going to be an opening. And there's been already rumblings of speculation about who can fill that spot as the Mets' new coach, skipper, wherever you want to go with that. And there's a former Met and Yankee that's been rumored to take that opening, Carlos Beltran. And there's a former Yankee skipper that has also been rumored to be considered for the opening, and that is Joe Girardi. So Joe Girardi already, he has a lot more thick skin than Mickey Callaway in order to deal with the New York media, but he also kind of comes across as just kind of, not very kind, or kind of too cold in terms of dealing with the media or dealing with his players, and just his all-around managerial ability. He's been criticized for being too uptight instead of kind of being laid back, more like an Aaron Boone approach. He kind of, he hasn't been a clubhouse favorite from what I've been hearing around the Yankees clubhouse over the past few years, but his knowledge of the game of baseball is just, not something that can be replicated by many. I think he still has a very wide knowledge of the game. He does know how to keep his guys in line, and has done very well as a skipper of the Yankees. I remember in 2013, they were an 85-win team with, a washed-up Vernon Wells and Travis Hafner manning everyday positions. And, 2014 as well, Derek Jeter's last season, he managed that very well. 84-win team with Derek Jeter batting at the top of the lineup, where Derek Jeter was he should have been retired a long time ago. It looked like at times during that year. He just was basically just done with the game of baseball. But the team that surrounded that 2014 year, not great. But not to get too far off topic about, you know, those two singular seasons. I think Joe Girardi just kind of was able to transition a culture from the Yankees clubhouse. He was able to allow more shenanigans to take place that wouldn't have been maybe approved by the Joe Torre Yankees, like A.J. Burnett pieing people in the face, CeCe Sabathia and his personality, Nick Swisher. These guys kind of came in collectively, changed that Yankee culture. Joe Girardi may not have been as big of a fan of it, but I guess from the surface of it, he was okay with it. So, I think Joe Girardi, I think he'd be a good fit for a potential manager spot with the Mets.
Yeah, and on Girardi, you and I are both Yankees fans, so we know what he's like. We know what how he carries himself and some of his strategies and whatnot. And I think he's a pro's pro. I think the thing you get with Girardi is you get kind of that stern, fatherly type manager for the most part. Not to say that he's completely emotionless. He's not Bill Belichick, but at the end of the day, he knows what he's doing. He's won World Series as a player. He's won World Series as a manager. He knows what it takes to get there. He might be stuck in some old school type thinking in certain things. I think in some ways, one of the things that always irritated me when he was with the Yankees is now a pretty popular trend, and that's using the bullpen quite a bit, being quick to pull pitchers, rotating through bullpen players quite a bit. And I know that was a big thorn in the Yankees' craw, so to speak, especially with the fans, and the way he kind of utilized some of his arms out of the pen. But it's become pretty commonplace around the league to use your bullpen very, very regularly, and he's kind of been a guy as a catcher, as a player, who has some insight into how, not just how pitchers are breaking down as the game goes along, but, just in terms of his understanding of the pitchers and how they're performing. And, I don't necessarily think that I always agreed with his choices when I was watching those games back in the day when he was with the Yankees, but I think when you're talking more on a broader scale, I think the Yankees maybe made that move a couple years ago to move on from Girardi. At the time, I disagreed with it, but at the time,
me too.
It was kind of like you were saying, like it was yes, Girardi kind of had this cold demeanor about him. He's not the most friendly guy with the media. We had seen him previously, before he came to the Yankees as a manager, kind of be a media personality that was not the same. It seemed like he was a little more outgoing in my memory, sir, at least how I remember him. And just kind of a good X's and O's type guy who had been there and done that. I think he would fit well with the Mets in the sense that you know what you're getting again. You know he can handle the New York scene. He's won in New York both as a player and as a manager. He's worked. He's got a strong personality. You know what happened with him in the Marlins back in the day in the early 2000s and middle 2000s when the former ownership of the Marlins kind of clashed with him. So you know he's got a bit of a strong personality. And I don't know if Brody's going to want to bring that in if he wants totality over the roster and decisions that are being made, or if he wants to kind of bring in a guy who is a trusted and known entity like Girardi is, kind of the opposite of what he had with Mickey Callaway, who's kind of new to the scene and new to the manager role. So, it's kind of I think that's what it really hinges on. And, of course, the Wilpons are going to have a big say in that, whereas a guy like Carlos Beltran, much like Aaron Boone, is kind of a former player transitioning into that role, which would be a first time for him. And I don't know which they'd prefer. I mean, I think Beltran's a guy who's a student of the game. I remember him as a player who's universally well liked, always talked about as a beloved guy in the clubhouses he was a part of. And I think that really does relate well. I think what you saw the Yankees do with Aaron Boone is they went to a guy who was more, I remember it being, said quite a bit about by Cashman, was they wanted a guy who could communicate and connect with their players. Exactly. I'm not always necessarily going to say that that's the best approach as long as the players aren't necessarily running the team. I think you do need some form of discipline from up top that can kind of overrule that, but I think Boone has been able to do that. I think he's been able to balance connecting with his players while also not letting the the players dictate every move, and I think it's been a really good blend that's led to a good culture with the Yankees, where you have a lot of these guys that are outwardly showing emotion on the field, and you know, some of the antics that are good antics to have, you know, putting the parrot up on top of the dugout for Edward Encarnacion when he's injured, and then using it when he's healthy and when he hits home runs, and you know, I don't love the Gardy stuff, but you know, at the same time, you're letting him be kind of a vocal person in that dugout, which is needed. Maybe not bashing on the roof of the dugout. I don't necessarily love that, but obviously that's been moved on from. But you know, he does have a great way of allowing his players to be themselves, express themselves, whether it's Didi Gregorius or Aaron Judge, or you know, and trusting them to make good decisions in those types of expressive personalities. And I think that's a good blend, and I think Beltran could be a similar guy. I mean, when he was with the Yankees, when he was with the Mets, when he's all throughout his time in the league, whether it was with his time in the NL and the AL, back and forth with the Astros, and I believe with the Cardinals too for a short time, if I'm not mistaken. You know, this is a guy who knows just about everything there is to know about baseball, and has, again, been respected at every stop he's been at. So it's kind of, I think, a difference. I'm not saying he's Aaron Boone, maybe as a manager personality-wise, maybe he's close to that. But it's where the Wilpons and where Brody wants to go with this, with the Mets. And I think it's going to be interesting, because we always talk about the Mets, and they always seem to have the Yankees in mind when they make personnel decisions, because you hear about them saying, we're never going to trade with the Yankees. We won't trade with the Yankees. Meanwhile, the Yankees are a team that probably has been offering a fair amount for guys like Noah Syndergaard. That's speculation on my part, but certainly there seem to be rumors around them and DeGrom in the past. And the Mets don't really want to give in to the Yankees and to trade a potential star to the Yankees, which, fine, I understand. But I don't know if they want to be stark contrast to the Yankees here, where they don't want to go the Aaron Boone route because they just tried a new manager in Mickey Callaway, and it didn't really work out. Do they want to go with a known entity like Joe Girardi, who was a Yankee at one point, of course, but, you know, would still kind of be the opposite? It would be kind of a contrasting move to what the Yankees are doing, or are they just going to do what they want to do, which I think is the best approach. Do what you feel is right. And, you know, I don't know. The Wilpons, generally speaking, are more conservative. They're not big on player expression. They're not. They've obviously, you've seen headbutts go on in their organization the last couple of years with prominent players like Noah Syndergaard and Matt Harvey that come to mind pretty apparently. Found it interesting that Van Wagenen came out pretty strongly today and said, without being asked, that Noah Syndergaard will be on the Mets roster next season. He's not looking to trade him in the offseason. So, you know, he's gone out very quickly and extinguished that fire regardless of who he brings in. But in either case, the Wilpons, generally speaking, are much more conservative in everything that they do. So I wouldn't be shocked at all, at the end of my long ramble there, if Joe Girardi ends up being the guy, especially since he's a proven entity. And again, he's a guy who's won. And as you said, has made some good decisions with rosters that weren't always necessarily the best when you're talking about the early 2010s. The Yankees went through that couple-year slump and then quickly rebuilt out of that. And really, a lot of the rebuilding was done while Girardi was there. So, you know, and Boone kind of took over as that rebuild was coming to a close. So we'll see. I'm very curious. It could be a third person that we're not even talking about, but those two come to mind very quickly in the sense of every Mets fan and a lot of baseball fans that just have that logical assumption that, hey, these are guys that have been around both New York and around baseball and know what they're doing.
I think Carlos Beltran would be a very good fit for the Mets because he'd have a chance to start over organically with the team, with the young team, a team that's kind of cohesive. The Mets, they all love working with each other. Marcus Stroman came in there, proved to be, you know, quickly fit in with the culture. He came in, he was like, let's get this done. You know, he compared himself on Twitter, his ERA, to Yankee pitchers. Like, you know, as a Yankee fan, I can't say, you know, I totally agreed with that graphic, nor did I necessarily love it. But if I'm looking at this from a neutral perspective or, like, from a Mets fan perspective, I love that, man. That shows that he's ready to come in and embrace the Mets culture. He's a local homegrown kid as well from the island, you know. I think he would be a good guy to have in there going forward for that culture. And got guys like J.D. Davis at the end of interviews screaming, "Let's go Mets!" You know, just the atmosphere at Citi Field this summer, I think this is very up and coming. I didn't think Mickey Callaway really fit in with that mold. So bringing in a guy like Carlos Beltran, he's been in this market before as a player on both teams. He's had major success as a Met. Other than that 2006 NLCS, my apologies, where he struck out looking. He should have swung. He can always swing at that. But, these guys are human beings too. He always performed with the Mets. As far as I'm concerned, he did have his injuries, but he was always good whenever he was out in the field. And with the Yankees, he was able to go out there in right field when he should have been a DH, and still performed. There were times, he DH, but remember we traded him in 2016. He was leading our team in home runs. I'm pretty sure he finished that season as the Yankees' top home run guy. So when he was aging, he was still producing, and then found his way in Houston after that short run with the Texas Rangers to close out in 2016, and he was able to make amends with that fan base. That fan base was very upset that he left the Houston Astros to go to the Mets, even though he wanted to go to the Yankees. Carlos Beltran made it clear that he would take less money to have gone to the Yankees, but the Yankees weren't interested because they already had their outfield set up with Bernie Williams still very much in tow. So Beltran ended up settling for the Mets. So I think Beltran's ability as well to go into Houston, kind of finish off unfinished business. Because if you remember, 2004, he had a big playoffs. That's what got him that big contract. Right. So to be able to go back and finish what he completed, come full circle, I think he has that chance with the Mets organization if he leads this team to a World Series and, possibly a World Series win. I think getting to the World Series at this point would be a big enough victory for the Mets. But if Carlos Beltran is able to go in as a manager and take this team to the next level, there is potential for him to be beloved by New York Mets fans again. And I think he has the ability to do that because as a manager, in today's day and age with a lot of imports coming from, overseas, a lot of them speak Spanish. His bilingual abilities to communicate with both English and Spanish-speaking players makes him much more valuable than the rest of the pack. You see these Joe Girardis, these Joe Maddens, and all these older guys. They're not able to do that. I mean, part of the reason why Carlos Beltran is able to do that is because he's from Puerto Rico, so he's been exposed to two different languages. So you can't blame Joe Girardi and Joe Madden on that. But this is where he becomes more valuable. He's done it on the biggest stages in the MLB. And now to be able to come in and use those leadership and bilingual abilities in a big market like New York as well, that's huge. That's invaluable because it's always good when you have a well-rounded manager in the aspects of communicating with players and their knowledge of the game. Both of those mixed in well together, I think Beltran would be my pick as a manager of the Mets. And, I think he's the guy that should be leading the Mets going forward. Joe Girardi, there is a place for him in today's baseball world, even though his communication skills can definitely be much improved. I think people of our generation kind of value guys that can relate to and communicate with you better. They're starting to become more empowered, and if they feel like a manager is being unreasonable, they're going to call him out on that. They're not scared to hold out. They're not scared to let the media know, like whether through subtle tweets or press conference answers. They're not afraid to do that, to create distractions, because they know that there's always going to be somebody better to lead that group. So, I just think Carlos Beltran is the guy because in 2017, if you also remember, this is the end of my long ramble basically. In 2017, he was being interviewed for that Yankee manager spot. I believe you touched up on that before, but if you didn't, to be considered for the New York Yankees manager spot right after you just won the World Series and go out on top as a player. That's huge for your legacy. I think the Mets should be all over that.
I don't think there's a bad decision between the two. I mean, again, I think it's what they want to go with style-wise, and I think it's what they want to I think, like you said, with a younger team, you want people that can relate. I think that has been shown in the bigs, but I think you can also look at some other teams that similar situations to the Mets a few years ago went and elected with, the Cubs with Joe Madden or somebody along the lines of, and I know it didn't really work out per se, but Don Mattingly went with the Dodgers a few years back, and I know they moved on, obviously, and that wasn't the best result. But there's
Cut you off real quick. Don Mattingly with the Marlins, apparently he's actually doing a very good job of leading that group. And, Derek Jeter is also kind of making it mandatory for the Marlins organization for them to learn Spanish coming up so that, bilingual abilities, and Miami has a large Cuban population. So, I think that's becoming more of a thing.
Those are the things that are really important. I think what you mentioned, too, with Beltran, which really sticks with me, is the fact that he's already been in consideration for manager positions despite only just recently retiring, from his playing career. So, just a couple years back. And I think it's something that, again, because he has a track record in New York as a player, that he's played for the Mets, he's played for the Yankees, he makes a ton of sense. And again, every stop he's been in his career, people just rave about him and just who he is as a person, and what he brings, not just as a player, but his leadership and his ability in that regard. So I think, give him the opportunity would make a lot of sense, and it would fit the trend we're starting to see more and more around the league with some of these younger guys being brought in. And I can understand and I can respect, too, if they do go the Girardi route.
Absolutely. He has proven that he can get it done in New York.
And he's a known entity. And I know he wasn't a prominent player back in his playing days. He was a backup catcher for the most part. And, I think he had some good stretches where he played more in his playing days. And he wasn't, a superstar by any stretch. But
no, he's like an Austin Rose game.
And he was part of that 90s Yankees group as well. And that's just there's a good amount of history on his side. As much as Beltran's a Hall of Fame player, Girardi's been around Hall of Fame players. He knows how they conduct their business, both as a player and a manager. Beltran is a Hall of Fame player.
He knows that as well.
And he knows how to do it as well. There's a million different ways to succeed in life and in professional sports, but the common thread with both of them is I think they know what it takes to get to a successful winning baseball team. And the Mets, I don't think, are as far removed as they've shown. I mean, they've made moves with their staff. They need to improve their bullpen, sure. They have some talented young hitters that are coming up. Pete Alonso being the face of their franchise effectively, as far as I'm concerned. I know they have Jake DeGrom, and who knows with Syndergaard and his future, but with the Mets. But at the end of the day, you need a little bit more stability in a couple of spots. You need a few more hitters. But the Mets aren't, I don't think they're as far as what some of their struggles have indicated. And even this season, though they didn't make the playoffs, they did finish on a better note after a really tough first half in which they were just battling to get to 500. They surged, in the second half, and we'll see if that carries over some positive momentum anyway. You got Stroman another year, and I know they're going to talk about Zach Wheeler and what to do with him and whether or not to get him out or let him walk. And at the end of the day, the Mets are going to have some strengths that you like to have in your organization that a new manager especially is going to like to work with, and also some good young players in the pipeline that might be up in the not too distant future. So it's an attractive job. It's a hard job, and with the Wilpons, it's a little bit complicated because they're not big into spending as much as some other teams around the league. They're more focused on building the pipeline up, and that's had mixed results for the Mets. They've produced some really good players. They've produced some busts, just like any other team. But it's all about the dollar signs in baseball. There's no hard cap. Even if you're not spending big on free agents, you have to go out and you really have to pump a lot of money into your scouting system, which is not just let's say signing international free agents when they're 16 years old, but also really making sure you're investing in getting your scouts out into the Dominican, overseas in Venezuela, getting out to Japan, seeing what maybe free agents are coming down that way, in the next Shohei Ohtani, those types of players. And that's one thing I think that, crosstown, the Yankees do well, and I think that's something that the Dodgers do well and the Red Sox do well, and there's no coincidence that Astros have invested heavily in their pipeline. That's the other alternative, and it takes longer, of course, to pay off, but that's the alternative. If you're not going to – and it's not to say the Mets don't spend some money, but the fact that they've been historically kind of gun-shy, I know they went and got Cespedes, and that's also not helping their case as far as future potential free agents investments, given that Cespedes has had a lot of injuries in his time with the Mets, and, that's one of the risks you run when you go out and shell out big bucks, or trade for big bucks either as well. It's going to be very interesting, I think, to see it'll be another indicator of who really holds the power there. If Brody's going to be able to bring in the guy he wants, or if the Wilpons are going to hijack that process and say, no, we're going to go with a more conservative approach with Girardi. And who knows, maybe Brody wants Girardi. But again, I would be perfectly happy to see Beltran get that job, because I think he has the tools and the skill set to really help that organization get back to the team that was in the World Series. It feels like a long time ago, but only a few years ago. So, we'll see. We'll see. There's still time. There's still time with some of those guys, with DeGrom, with Syndergaard, with Stroman, with some of they're hoping for rebounds from guys like Edwin Diaz, and of course in the back end of their bullpen. But we'll see. I'm very curious to see what happens with the Mets, and I've said it. I've remained constant with this. It's better for baseball when the Yankees and Mets are both really relevant. And, I know it's been a long time where both teams have kind of had their struggles and they don't seem to line up ever, with their successes. Even though they have had both successful years at the same time in recent years, they also have had, typically one team struggling, one team failing, and at the end of the day, it's better for baseball when the New York market is fully engaged and rooting for playoff baseball, which it almost was this year. That Mets run fell a little bit short. But, yeah, on that note, Samir, Yankees getting ready tomorrow night, to host the Twins and get their postseason going, and hopefully a longer postseason than they've had in a long time. And they announced today their starting trio of starters for the first 3 games of the series, going first with James Paxton, who's been lights out after the trade deadline. Second game, Masahiro Tanaka, who's obviously shown in the past he can be a great playoff pitcher. And then Luis Severino in Game 3 to round out the first 3 games. And then after that, it's a whole lot of question marks. CC Sabathia not included on the playoff roster. J.A. Happ, God help us if he's relied on to win a game. We might see the opener strategy used, which has brought a lot of criticism from a lot of different corners of baseball, not just in the New York media, but we're also seeing other teams potentially consider that as well in the postseason because of how much the bullpen has grown in the last few years in its role. So I don't know, Samir. I want to get your take on that as far as the Yankees' options there. I don't mind the first 3, but I'm curious to see what you think of the order they picked and what maybe they'll do after that first 3 should it come to that.
Well, first of all, I think James Paxton and Masahiro Tanaka as your 1 and 2 in the postseason, especially in New York, I think you'll be sitting good on that, because Paxton, I think he's really turned the corner since the All-Star break. Been lights out, as you said. Masahiro Tanaka, we all know what he can do in the playoffs. He gives you, 7 or 8 innings, maybe 1-run ball. That's what he's been. He's been pretty good with giving that bullpen a rest as well. I think he's very composed. Tanaka might not always be the most consistent starter in the regular season, but when the lights go brighter, his performance really shines. So I think games 1 and 2, being home as well, I expect big performances from both of those guys. Even though the Twins, I'll get to this maybe a little later.
Yeah.
They got some sluggers, so nothing is set in stone.
Pop,
they got serious pop. But I like how you mentioned J. Happ, and how he might not be reliable, in the postseason this year.
I'm nervous.
Well, you have every right to be. He's been very inconsistent throughout the entire season, but in September, he's actually turned kind of a corner. He's only given up 5 earned runs in the month of September in 27 innings pitched. And I can very much see him being the type of guy to come out of the pen and get important outs, especially as a lefty specialist or a long reliever. He's still very good at eating up those innings. This guy was an all-star just last season. Last season, he was trusted to be the guy that can get us a win against the Boston Red Sox. Obviously, that failed in the postseason. But hey, that stuff happens. Boston last year was just historically good. I think we're sitting very well with our starting pitching and our bullpen this entire postseason. I think, you know what you're getting from Paxton, Tanaka. Severino has looked sharp ever since coming off the IL. He's been on the IL all season. Severino looks as if he hasn't missed a beat, quite honestly. Now, Severino might not be able to give you a full, 7 or 8 innings. He can give you more like 4 or 5, I think. But if he can give you at least 4, if he can give you 4, that's huge in the postseason. If he gives up maybe 1 run in 4 innings, whatever amount of pitches he throws, 100 pitches. Every pitch counts in the postseason. It's going to be amplified. More guys are going to be fouling off pitches. So pitch counts are going to be high. But if he can, manage that, stick to his game plan, locate his pitches, get you 4 innings, that's all you need from Severino. Hand it to the bullpen after that. Make it a bullpen game. Your bullpen is deep enough to be able to get by in this series and get by, I guess, a decent or, mediocre postseason performance. Like, I'm expecting Tanaka and Paxton to go out there and give you 6 or 7 innings of 1 or 2 run ball. I expect that from them. That's an expectation. Now, is it gonna live up to that? Who knows? Because the Minnesota Twins obviously are very powerful with hitting home runs and a well-balanced lineup. So that's to be determined. But
right.
I think this Yankee bullpen can come in and serve as a Band-Aid if things get ugly. In the 3rd inning, if Paxton or Tanaka or Sevy, leave the bases loaded, 1 out, 0 outs, 3rd or 4th inning, Yankees got to go with the bullpen there. You can't play with fire against the Twins because one mislocation and 1 swing, it can open up the game on either front. So you got to play pitching very conservatively in the postseason in this matchup. But you also mentioned CC, being left off the roster. I'm not a fan of that. I mean, the ALDS I can understand. Like, okay, it's the Minnesota Twins, so the series isn't going to be taken as seriously as potentially a Tampa Bay or a Houston series in the ALCS. So if Boone is coming from a perspective of give him some rest, don't put him out there until the games really count for us in terms of making a deep World Series run, I can buy into that because CC has had trouble with health issues throughout like the past couple of years. So he's getting older, his body's wearing down. So, he's easy to get to at this point of his career. But in limited time, 1 or 2 innings out of the bullpen, if the bases are loaded, he needs to come out and get a big out. You can count on it. He's not going to miss a beat out of the bullpen. He's just as reliable as they come in those small moments. He can't give you 5 or 6 innings anymore of shutout ball, especially in the postseason. But he's still very capable of getting those big outs in the postseason. And his veteran leadership is also important in the postseason. He's the first guy that's gonna go out there and fight for you in an instance where you need to fight. So, having said that, he's an extension of what Aaron Boone is trying to get out there. And quite honestly, I think you need him in the ALCS and the World Series.
Well, and you touched on it earlier, too. Can't hurt to have another lefty out there. I know CC's been battling a couple of different ailments this year, and it's limited his consistency. I mean, we've seen some old vintage CC this year, but then, of course, right now they're calling it shoulder issues that are keeping him out for this round. And of course, we all know that he's had the knee issues as well. So it's a chance, like you said, maybe to get him rested up, maybe to get him ready. But I do agree, the intangible side of things that he brings is intense. I mean, this can almost be viewed as a tribute season to CC Sabathia in the sense that we know he's going to be done, and we know he's still very invested in the game. And, of course, the Yankees, he said he wants a front office position after the season. I'm curious to see how much a role him even just being at the park is going to draw, because we all know the Yankees are a tight-knit group, and we know that they love CC Sabathia. He's one of the leaders of that clubhouse for sure, and he has that just complete and utter, I would call it, invaluable experience.
Absolutely. He's an ALCS MVP winner, 2009. You need that.
And he's a guy who's won with the Yankees. He's had a storied career. He's been through a lot off the field in his career that has made him a stronger person. And, it's even in you could see it when they did the tribute afternoon to him with his family there. This is everything for him and him and his family. And the game and his family are what his concerns are, and he's ready to roll for the Yankees. And I would like to see him get into some game action. I like your idea of maybe bringing him out of the pen as opposed to putting him out there as a starter, and seeing what kind of role he can give you, especially as a lefty, and that, what he's kind of been in his last several years of his career is kind of a ground ball type of guy and more finesse than power than he used to be back in his heyday. I think that would serve well against a team, especially like Minnesota. Now, obviously, that's not going to be a factor here in this series one way or the other. But like you had alluded to, the Twins being second only to the Yankees in home runs this season.
No, they're actually first.
In the 300 club.
They're actually first, the Twins.
You know what? I think and prior to the end of the season. So you're either way talking about the top two home run hitting clubs in baseball this season,
right?
Squaring off to start the postseason, and pitching is obviously going to be as important as it's been for both teams all season. So, at the end of the day, what I kind of look at now is from the opposite perspective. The Yankees have been the arch nemesis that the Twins have yet to figure out, and they've knocked the Twins out of the postseason 5 times since 2003. The Twins themselves, I don't think 2006, and it's just fled for the Twins in the playoffs for a long time, and it's obviously something that they're looking to get over. You hear them talking about slaying the dragon. You hear Rocco Baldelli coming out and saying, hey, we have to get this done. This is something that we need to do as a franchise. And obviously just not for the sake of winning a playoff series, just to advance to the next round, but also that because it's the Yankees, there's such a long history now of the Yankees knocking the Twins out of the playoffs. It reminds me a little bit of the Yankees when they played the Angels in the early 2000s. It wasn't as extensive as let's say the what is now the Yankees-Twins relationship, but it's still something that I can remember being an issue in those first several years of the 2000s, the Yankees having so many issues getting over the small ball Angels. I can understand what they mean when it's like a nemesis. I can understand from other sports my Pittsburgh Steelers could never beat the New England Patriots. So it's kind of like that, I guess, with the Twins and the Yankees. And I'm curious, I don't know, do you think that is a kind of a – I don't want to call it motivation because they have enough motivation as it is to beat the Yankees just to move on in the postseason. But how much do you think that plays in, if at all, to the current Twins roster, many of whom haven't been as exposed to the Yankees as this big bad enemy as, say, the Twins fan base or the Twins ownership, because they're sick of losing to the Yankees. But a lot of these players, have only been here a couple of years, some of them more recent than that. What do you think is the mentality of that Twins ball club as they head into this pivotal series?
Well, of course they want to beat the Yankees. The Yankees are the biggest villains in all of baseball. I think there's enough motivation there. I'm sure there's some motivation for the Twins to beat the Yankees after being owned by the Yankees for the past 16 years, or whatever you want to say. Having said that, I think at the end of the day, it has zero impact because it's not like the 2003 Twins have any impact on the 2019 Twins, or the 2009 Twins have an impact on today's Twins. Same could be said for the Yankees. Who remains from the last time the Yankees beat the Twins in the postseason, other than 2017?
Right.
Like yeah, exactly. Well, right. Let's say 2010. All right, 2010 as the last time the Yankees took out the Twins. CeCe Sabathia and Brett Gardner. That's it. Otherwise, everybody else is new. Everybody else was probably still in high school or just graduated from high school on the Yankees roster today from when the Yankees last beat the Twins. This is how young these guys are. This is how different it's been. 9 years doesn't feel like a long time ago, but It's a long time ago. So I just don't think that this is just a storyline. This is just for the MLB or ESPN to amplify the series. Like, it's just going to be a storyline. That's all it's going to be. It's going to have no bearing on performance out there. Both teams are going to be trying to win equally, regardless of history. Both teams are going to want to go out there and win the whole thing. They're going to want to prove that they're better than one another. They're going to want to prove, the Twins are going to want to prove that their power is no fluke. They want to prove that their power is better than the Yankees, and the Yankees want to do the opposite. They want to prove that they're the powerful team. We were one homer short of setting the record this season after last season setting the record. But our motivation is to beat this team so that nobody can talk about this Twins team being better than us, and we want to get to the World Series. The Yankees are on a dry spell. A proud, historic franchise has not won a World Series since 2009. That's concerning. After being a kid, I couldn't even appreciate the title runs of the 90s and the 2000s. I was too young to appreciate that. So really, I've only seen the Yankees win one World Series because I was 5 years old when they beat the Mets. You think I really cared back then? I mean, some people might have when they're 5 years old, but I can't say I did. But so, not to make this about me, but as a Yankee, as a proud franchise like the Yankees, you need to freaking win. You need to go out on top for CC Sabathia now because he's obviously not going to be back next season. You need to just get over the hump. There's been so many years in the making. You missed out on big-name free agents like Max Scherzer, Bryce Harper, Manny Machado. Some for the better, some for the worse. We could use Max Scherzer right now. We should have paid him when we had the chance to. So
Patrick Corbin.
We didn't get Patrick Corbin. We thought he was too expensive. Well, I have my own thoughts about Keuchel. I'm not too high on him, but
I know. On a personal level, I can understand that, but hey, he's going to be a Game 1 starter in the series. It's just kicking off, I believe, is it not? And just right now, I think it just got started. He's starting for Atlanta, I believe.
Throw that on the background. But with Keuchel, though, he's good, but I just don't think he'd fit New York. I think he'd be very much like a Sonny Gray, but who knows? You only know when you see it happen firsthand. So, having said all that, this is the New York freaking Yankees. Like, you built this team. You got Aaron Judge. You got Gleyber Torres. You got Didi Gregorius. You got a whole bunch of guys. You have good starting pitching, not great. But the Boston Red Sox didn't have great starting pitching last year outside of Chris Sale. So, enough with the excuses. Like, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year. No more moral victories. This is it. 2019 has been circled on every Yankees fan calendar for the last few years because we thought this was going to be the year we got Bryce Harper and Jose Fernandez, rest in peace, and Manny Machado. We thought we were going to get all those three guys and we were going to be the dominant powerhouse. But there was a different path to how we got here. He got Giancarlo Stanton healthy now. He should add to that power to offset the Twins. You have a roster here. You're a proud organization. That should be enough pride. You can't let this team from Minnesota come in and rain on your parade. You gotta just take them out. That's a team from the Midwest. Who gives a crap about this team? I got a little passion on the Yankees side of here. But let me attempt real quick to make a side for the Twins. Man, we're a Midwest team. Nobody cares unless we win. This big bully team in New York, we built this team organically. We don't have the top 5 payroll in the MLB. We built this thing through integrity, through hardship, through losing seasons. It's our time to show the Yankees that we're boss. We're sick and tired of losing. But I think the Yankees have more motivation.
I think I can understand what you're saying in terms of the Yankees, even though they're a still pretty young team, the uncertainty that I have with them, I don't know how much it translates to the players. They're more concerned on just any time they have an opportunity to make a run, they want to make it. But as a fan, I'm curious because Hal Steinbrenner certainly does things differently. And I don't know what this coming off season is going to bring. I know what it would bring if his dad was in charge, and I like some of the things that Hal Steinbrenner has instituted. I like his commitment to the pipeline, allowing Brian Cashman to really build from within. But I also have a fear that maybe Didi Gregorius is gone after this season. Maybe they're not even going to talk to Garrett Cole because they know he's going to make an ungodly amount of money. Meanwhile, I think he would look great in pinstripes. There's a whole list of things that will come up this after the postseason that will be interesting to follow. And while I know the Yankees are still going to emerge a good team on the other side of it, I don't know that they'll be as good as they are right now. And I think that's going to be the thing is you have to play like there's no tomorrow in the playoffs, regardless of who you are. But for the Yankees especially, it's not like they won't be a competitive team moving forward, but losing some of the character they're going to lose in this offseason, whether it's CC Sabathia or some of the veterans there. Remind me, is Gardner a free agent after this year?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
He is. So there is another option. A guy who is from the old guard, so to speak, but still an elemental part of that clubhouse. He's effectively a captain for this team. If Didi walks, that's another guy who's a leader on this team. There's a lot of guys that are the glue, and I know Aaron Judge is a great guy, and I know Gleyber Torres is a great guy, and those guys have a lot to do with the younger players and being the faces of the team as far as star power goes. But you're potentially losing out a lot of character in that clubhouse after this season. And while, yes, talent can be brought in to replace it, that doesn't always mean you're a better team for it. So I think from that perspective, as a Yankees fan, I'm certainly, concerned that, you don't want to let this year pass you by. I know there's powerhouses waiting, but you can't overlook these Twins who, I'm out here in the plains in the Midwest. These fans out here, they're diehard. They're ready to go. I know some Twins fans out here. And I know it's been a bleak existence for the last 20 years for most, really since they won the whole thing in 91 or 92, I forget which year it was. It's been a long trek.
I think it was 91 because 92 and 93 was the Blue Jays.
And that was the last time the Twins really got past the ALDS. So you're talking about a lot of struggle in the here and now between that, and not many playoff appearances to begin with in those years since. So longer than I've been alive. We're talking almost 30 years now. The Twins have really struggled since that last World Series victory, and it's really for the Twins a sense of urgency and saying, hey, we have a new manager. He brought us in. He's got a 100-plus win season to start us out here with Baldelli, and the things are turning around and things have lined up really well. But you get that sense due to the fact that the Twins have kind of been lightning in the bottle here and there for the better part of the last decade. They can't seem to string together multiple big-time years like this back-to-back. That you kind of get that urgency almost naturally as an organization. Maybe not the players so much as the decision makers and the fans, where, hey, if we have a chance, we got to run with it because we don't know when the next time it's coming. And, players I don't think feel that way. I think players are just, they live in a vacuum. They live in that singular, hey, the here and now. And that's what you should be. But, when you have a CC Sabathia type storyline and you have a beloved player that's, finishing up his career, then that enters into the equation a little bit as well. But for the most part, you're talking about, hey, we're living for the here, we're living for the now, and why can't we win this whole thing? So I think the Twins are definitely a dangerous team. I think just like the Yankees, they have some questions as far as their pitching staff goes, and I think I give the edge to the Yankees because the Yankee Stadium, the Yankees have just been so good at home this year. They have been a force of nature. The fans have been, how often have we seen in the last decade or so, really since the new stadium opened, we know the prices are hard. Samir, you and I both know that. We've been to the games. You can sit in the bleachers and save some money, and you can get some tickets on the secondary market where you go on to StubHub or go any one of those places. Ticketmaster, I think, is the preferred Yankees client. But, it's been tough over the last several years, and then more and more lately, I've seen some games just randomly throughout the middle of the season, just popping on my phone and watching some highlights and seeing the packed house really in the middle of the summer, and that's a really encouraging thing to see because, one, the Yankees play an entertaining brand of baseball. They have for several years now, but two, it goes to what the Yankees have said consistently throughout the year. Why have you been so good at home? Well, these fans feed us. I know Aaron Judge says that, and it's the right thing to say, but I believe him when he says these fans have been so incredible all year. It's been a home field advantage, and the Yankees having that advantage in this series, I think, is going to be a big difference maker. I mean, we know both teams can hit home runs. We know both teams are going to hit home runs. But the Yankees, I think, are going to come out, and it's going to be interesting tomorrow to see. I think they're going to start fast. I have a feeling that that's going to be, again, a team that has some playoff experience. I know last year was too abbreviated. You can't really classify it as real playoff experience. Well, you can classify it as real playoff experience, but it's more or less what not to do in the postseason. Whereas the Twins have little bits and pieces of it with some of their roster. And in a similar way, they haven't had the deep runs that they've wanted. I think you're going to get urgent baseball. I think you're going to see the Yankees, I just think they're going to have a little bit more than what the Twins bring in this series. And I know I'm biased, and I know they are similar teams on paper this season and to what some of their strengths and weaknesses are. But I think it's going to be a battle of which Paxton shows up, and if the Yankees can get to Berrios quickly, he's their ace. But, he's just like all pitchers in baseball this year. Ace numbers are what? You'd think in the 2 ERA range, and there are some of those players this year in baseball. And Berrios this year has had a 3.68 ERA, and he didn't quite crack 200 strikeouts. He was right around it. He was, I think, 195 he finished with. But he's definitely a number one starter, and he's going to get that start tomorrow night. But, we'll see. Just 26 home runs in 200 innings this year. It's not to say that the home run ball will dictate who wins this series, but there's a chance it plays a major role in that both teams are so good at it. So we'll see. I'm curious. I know Berrios has given a lot of length this year. 2/3 of his starts were quality starts. We know that James Paxton had some streakiness, partly due to injury this year with the Yankees, and I think that in itself, those two things are going to be huge tomorrow to really dictate the rest of the series, the tempo. The Yankees have to jump to their bullpen early, and Berrios is able to go 7-8 innings and keep the Yankees to a minimal amount of runs. Then all of a sudden, I feel that pendulum swinging right over to the Twins side of things because it pushes the Yankees on their heels. So I think it's really key. My key for that, I guess, is going to be the start of Paxton. Is he going to be that second-half Paxton that we've seen, that 110 starts in a row? Or is he that guy that in that last start of the season wasn't quite as sharp as he had been prior to that? But, at the end of the day, I'm not going to hold it against him, given how dominant he was down the second half. Really, the post-trade deadline, I should say, post-All-Star break Paxton. So I think that's really what will probably dictate the whole series, is who shows up first tomorrow night. And I have a feeling it's going to be the Yankees, just given it at how well they've played at home this year.
I do think the Yankees are going to get off to a fast start as well. I think Paxton is poised to pitch very well tomorrow in front of his home crowd. But one thing that Paxton does need to worry about with this Twins team is that they hit lefty pitching the best this year in the majors by far. They had 95 homers collectively as a team against left-handed pitching this year. And the slugging percentage, which is .521 versus lefties, second all-time to the 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers, which was .536. Guess what? The Brooklyn Dodgers have been out of baseball for a long time. They've been replaced by the Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, I guess you can make that comparison, but whatever. It's been a long time since some club has gotten that high. So, having said that as well, Nelson Cruz, still getting it done at this age. 1.207 OPS versus lefties. So, every pitch that Paxton throws to these guys, they got a plethora of guys that can hit left-handed pitching outside of, by far, the best hitter, in Nelson Cruz. And they also got C.J. Cron, Miguel Sano, and then even their left-handed hitters, Eddie Rosario, Max Kepler hit left-handed pitching as well. So Paxton is the key in this series. Left-handed pitcher, been on a streak, but he's going to have his work cut out for him against this Minnesota Twins team. They hit left-handed pitching very, very well. He's got to execute on every single pitch. It's got to be perfectly located. Can't afford for one pitch to go down the middle. He's going to have to rely on other pitches other than his fastball. He's going to have to really be on top of his game tomorrow in the Bronx, because we know if he mislocates one pitch, it can go out for a home run. This Minnesota Twins team is very, very capable of putting up runs on the board very, very fast. After all, these two clubs had a classic this summer, ended in an Aaron Hicks diving catch. A lot of offense between these two teams. Don't expect pitching to be the name of the game here. Paxton can go out there and perform and get over the hurdles of Minnesota being a good left-handed hitting team. Then this should be the Yankees game, because we do know the Yankees are very capable of putting up runs on the board, especially with the home crowd behind them. Fast and in a hurry. DJ LeMahieu, he's going to go up there, he sees one pitch, he's just going to swing and it's just going to get out of the park. That's going to go in the gap for a double. He is a table setter. DJ LeMahieu is somebody that's just not going to be fazed by the big moment. He's going to go up there, no emotion, get whatever he needs to get done. That's going to set the table up very well for the sluggers that hit behind him or in front of him. Brett Gardner is going to grind out at bats, ranked in the top 5 this year in pitches seen at the plate, or pitches per at bat. So, whatever you want to call it, he's going to go up there and just grind out at bats. That's going to set the table for the rest of the Yankees lineup. They operate in terms of a bloop and a blast. They're going to go up there. They're going to grind out at bats to the pitches they want to see. And Barrios, great pitcher, but he's just not as experienced as a lot of these Yankee guys. So the moment could very well get to him. I think the Yankees, honestly speaking, Minnesota's going to make it tough for them with their lineup. I think the Yankees sweep this 3-0.
I'm gonna be a little more conservative and say this takes at least 4 games. I do think what you're saying is very, very valid, and I like the Yankees' approach in general offensively. They seem to be consistently at one of the best teams in the league at grinding pitchers down. But in the postseason, everybody gets a little bit longer of a leash. The Yankees, for their part, they're in terms of being able to generate pitches, that is again going to be crucial, because I think that's when they're on their best game, and when most teams are at their best is when they can see everybody's arsenal as far as what pitches to throw and what pitches the guys are going to try to get you out with. But end of the day, we know both lineups are going to be packing plenty of power, and I'm curious to see which bullpen prevails. We know the Yankees bullpen is very capable and is one of the better bullpens when it's on in baseball, but we've also seen some of the things that, a little concerning at times. Certain guys going through hot streaks and cold streaks. It's not unusual, but the Yankees need their guys to be on their A game. We've seen good, right around that trade deadline time, I remember Chapman kind of hitting the skids a little bit, and he righted himself. Chad Green's kind of been a roller coaster up and down this year. So I think some of those parts are going to be moving in the right direction for the Yankees if they're going to pull the series off, which I think they will. I think what it'll probably be is I think you'll get 2 at home in the Yankees initially, and then when they get their first matchup in Minnesota will get one, the Yankees will close it out. But I think Minnesota, just their lineup is too hard to contain for 3 games. I agree with you in that it's possible, but I think the Yankees, I'm just curious to see, and correct me if I'm wrong, Samir, I believe this is Paxton's first playoff start. I could be wrong.
I think you're right, Tim. I think you are.
Yes.
Because Seattle hasn't made the postseason, since we were little kids, since Ken Griffin Jr. and A-Rod were still on the team. So, this is definitely his first postseason start. But I think he is groomed for this moment. I think he's ready.
Right. Well, I think he's going to do all right tomorrow, and he's got good career numbers against the Twins. I'm seeing a 2.27 ERA here and 6 career starts against the Twins, and he's much better at home this year than on the road, which is important because we all know the short porch at Yankee Stadium and all the things that Yankee Stadium brings dimension-wise that everyone complains about and yet doesn't complain about when they get those home runs over there to the shorter parts of the field when their team does it on the road. But at the end of the day, I could see the Yankees doing what they typically do to the Twins here. I just think this Twins team is a little tougher than that. I think they're going to force it to at least 4, and I think the Yankees will just outmuscle them at that point. But this is a Twins team that's tough. They're resilient. I'm going to give them credit for that. And I think, like you said, that I wouldn't be shocked at all if, like that Aaron Hicks game, were to happen at least in one of these games, whether it's tomorrow night, whether it's the elimination game that seals the deal. I could see one of those barn burners breaking out because these teams are so similar.
Absolutely. I mean, I could very much see the Twins winning one game, but just part of me is just thinking that the Yankees just don't want to waste time in Game 3. I think they're just going to get their act together. I feel like Minnesota will get off to kind of a fast start, get their home crowd behind it, but I think the Yankees will just kind of go from there and they'll pounce. They'll be like, we don't want to waste any more time. We want to get ourselves rested for the ALCS. I think there'll be plenty of motivation for them to not break that streak, especially with CC and Brett Gardner still in pinstripes. I think they're going to want to keep that, undefeated streak going. I mean, that's just a side story, again, storyline, but I feel like that kind of plays a part here as well. I think the Yankees are just going to continue what they do with the Twins and, just try to sweep them in 3 games. 1 game in Minnesota, see you later. I feel like that'll be their mindset, but you never know. This team is definitely capable of taking at least 1 game, but, they could even win the series if everything breaks correctly their way, but I just don't see it happening. Even though Minnesota, like I touched up on before, has hit left-handed pitching very well at historical levels this season, the Yankees just have a good right-handed bullpen to come in there and clean things up if things really got bad for Paxton in the start. That may make Jay Happ less playable in the series. That may have also gone to Aaron Boone's decision to sit Sabathia this series because he's a left-hander. Just get him healthy for the Houston-Tampa series. We need him, especially in the Tampa series. I'm going to say that very loud and clear. We need him for that series. But, first we got to get through the Twins, which, honestly, I just don't see to be that big of a problem. The Twins are right there, but I just... the pass is not going to play too much of a factor, as I said before, but at the same time, I just think how the Yankees owned the Twins this year as well, after Minnesota gave up that big lead in the Aaron Hicks catch game, I just think the Yankees still have their number. I just don't see a way the Twins come out of the series. But, 1 game is not wildly unreasonable, but I still think the Yankees own this series pretty well.
And the one other point I'll make about the Yankees at home, there was that stretch for the longest time where they hadn't lost a home series. I think it extended something like April to September or something like that. Almost the entirety of the season. They're not quite. I think there was maybe August, maybe it was when that streak ended, but it was something insane, like end of April, maybe it was beginning of May. I'm trying to go back and look through each series, but it's a little difficult the way I have it organized in front of me. But needless to say, the Yankees at home this season, when the majority of games in a series are obviously, you're not really talking about split series anymore, but other than the postseason. But at home, the Yankees have just been so consistently good. Again, I think if tomorrow the Yankees pull off the win in Game 1, I think it's going to be just too difficult for the Twins to mount a rally out of that. But in either case, I'm curious, Samir. Right now, obviously, we already have one playoff NLDS game going. And it's already 1-0 Braves over the Cardinals in the top of the second there. So off to a good start is Atlanta. But what kind of stands out to you about the rest of the league? Obviously, I'm going to be watching Tampa and Houston. Houston is the presumed favorite in the AL, and LA is the presumed favorite in the NL. Both teams are juggernauts. Both teams are very well-rounded, and very, very few weaknesses exist on both. But do you see some upsets? Do you see Tampa maybe with that Tampa-Houston series Pittsburgh Pirates have been through hell this season, and they can see all their former pitchers basically going on to winning or playing in the postseason in that series. There's a bunch of them in that series alone. But in either case, do you see any Cinderella stories kind of coming out here? Are the other series largely irrelevant? Beyond the obvious, the Dodgers and Nationals, the Astros and Tampa, and the Yankees and Twins. Are we worried about St. Louis, Atlanta? Are either of those teams a threat? Are any of the underdogs a threat? Or are we going chalk here as far as the favorites?
Well, I personally think that the Rays could give the Astros a run for their money. The Rays just looked unbothered last night against the A's. I watched a little bit of the game, but the Rays just kept putting runs on the board first couple of innings. It looked like they controlled the game. Charlie Morton was in his element, owning the A's. I just think that the Rays came in there with a mission and got out of Oakland. So, I think that will propel the Rays to do very well against the Astros. So, it's going to be a tough series. But personally, I see the Astros coming out of that series in 5 games. It's going to be it's going to be, an interesting series. But, I think the Rays are very capable of stealing a game on the road, as well as I think the Astros are capable of stealing one in Tampa Bay. I think they're going to split the first couple of games, no particular order. But Game 5 back in Houston, I think Houston will close out the series right in front of their home fans. And in terms of Dodgers Nationals, I think that's going to be I mean, maybe not a sweep. I don't know. I just don't see the Nationals, being much of a threat to this Dodgers team. Dodgers are a much more complete team with Cody Bellinger being an MVP candidate. Their pitching speaks for itself. Ryu, Kershaw, this goes on there. I just think that the Dodgers are much better rounded with their lineup, their starting rotation. Bullpen's not bad. I think the Dodgers sweep the Nationals. I think the Nationals continue their playoff woes. I don't see any particular scenario in how the Nationals can come out of that series. They might steal a game, but I just don't see it happening. The Dodgers is just going to be too much for them. Braves Cardinals, I think it'll be pretty straightforward as well. I think the Braves are going to beat up on the Cardinals. Cardinals kind of lucked in and got into the postseason because Cubs are just awful this year. Brewers didn't necessarily live up to expectations, and Christian Yelich going down at the end of the season didn't necessarily help out the Brewers, although the Brewers did get hot even after Yelich went down. I think the Cardinals kind of just won that division basically just on the fact that that division was so weak. So, Cardinals are a historically good baseball franchise. They have some certain method that always works in their favor. And,
magic.
the Braves. The Braves are, a pretty great team. I think they're one season away from really being a powerhouse. I think the Braves get this in 4 games.
Gotcha. I can't disagree with much of what you said there. What I will say is I know, Tampa's a really solid team, and they're kind of rising out of the struggles that they've had being the market they're in and being just a team that's been struggling to get back to where it wants to be, where it was a while back, where it was one of those heartwarming stories, tiny payroll, big competitive stretch, not in the not too distant past, but I'm curious as to how Houston is going to be beaten. I don't want to say it. I don't like saying it. I don't like admitting it, but Houston, just on their lineup side of things, not even looking at their pitching staff at the moment, they led the MLB as a team in batting average, on-base percentage, and slugging percentage, and had the fewest strikeouts in all of baseball. And that terrifies me because that means they're not easy to get out. They're a tough team as it is to deal with it lineup-wise. But when so many of these bullpens are structured around guys that can beat you in a strikeout and throw their best stuff by you, and the Astros are almost 100 less strikeouts than the next closest team, about 70 actually, I think. 70 less than the next closest team during the regular season. To me, that is a scary proposition because that means their lineup is just, and we know this already, but we know their lineup is just so complete as it is. And I don't like saying it because the Astros have kind of been the nemesis of the Yankees. I know the Red Sox were last year and are always, but the Astros have built a juggernaut, and just alone from the hitting side, I'm worried about how teams are going to be able to best them. And I hope you're right. I really do. I really hope that the Rays can pull off the underdog story. We know the Yankees and Rays would be a great series if both of them move on. I think everyone in their right mind outside of New York and Houston right now probably wants the Rays and Twins to meet up because they're so sick of seeing the recent success of the Astros, even though they have a lot of likable personalities and some not so likable, but mostly likable personalities in there. There's a few I'm not fond of, but guys like Jose Altuve are easy to root for. And then the Twins, of course, being an underdog story and having a great year. People like that in the postseason when their team's out. So, I would be curious to see if it isn't chalk. I would love to see some variety. And for the Yankees' sake, I'd love to not see the Astros in the next round if the Yankees and Astros both advance. But no, I mean, in the AL at the very least, I'm concerned, Samir. I part of it is my bitterness towards the fact that if there's one weakness in Brian Cashman's resume, it's the fact that he's had trouble evaluating starting pitching in pretty much the entirety of his time with the Yankees. He kind of walked into a situation early in his career in the 90s when the Yankees had already developed some pitchers, namely Andy Pettitte and Mariano Rivera, who are already in the system. And then, of course, he adds in a few more guys like Mike Mussina and others. There were some moves he's made that have been shrewd, and there have been some good ones. Obviously, CC Sabathia was a major acquisition and helped win a World Series in 2009. He was probably, I would say, one of the two most elemental players in that run, and you would probably make the case rightfully that A-Rod was as well in that postseason, especially in the World Series, if I recall correctly. Those two were huge in bringing home the Yankees' 27th ring. But, when you're talking about just his weakness in general, Cashman has always been a little bit off with starting pitching. A lot of the guys he's brought in free agency have been busts. A lot of the guys he's traded for
even like guys like Randy Johnson.
It's just I'm worried because I know, like we've already talked about, the Yankees have some guys that are good in the starting pitching front, but you look at the big three that Houston brings to the table, and you can look at what the Astros bring to the table the Dodgers bring to the starting pitching tables in the NL, and I don't know how the Yankees stack up. I know their lineup's phenomenal, and I know baseball is different, and that's all I can really hold on to. When I was a kid growing up, great pitching staffs 9 times out of 10 trumped great hitting and great batters as a lineup, and I saw that time and again play out in the playoffs with the Yankees in the early 2000s. And then you talk about more recently with how everything has kind of swung the opposite way. It's almost like with the advent of starting pitching meaning less and bullpens meaning more and lineups hitting more home runs, people talk about the juiced baseballs. How are we going to avoid the chalk matchup of Dodgers-Astros? That is my main concern for this postseason. Beyond just the Yankees, who are right there as a powerhouse team, just not with the same type of pitching up front in the starting rotation. How do we avoid it just being too easy each year to just say at the beginning of the year, just like basketball has been for the majority of this decade, I wouldn't even say majority, just really the last 5-6 years, it's going to be Cavs and it's going to be Warriors. That's obviously changed. But for the better part of the last 5-6 years, it's been that way. How are we going to avoid that in baseball where we can just say at the beginning of the year, as long as they're healthy, it's Dodgers, it's Astros? How do teams circumvent the roster building those teams have done, especially with relevance to this postseason?
Well, you're starting to see it a little bit. You're starting to see teams like the Braves, building their team from within and, making the right moves, and the Yankees obviously are right there, making the right moves, using their payroll very well, but also developing what they have in their farm system, going out there getting international signing money to bring in these, big prospects from overseas. I think it's right there. Like, you're starting to see other teams develop, but it also comes down to you need to be willing to spend in order to take it to the next level. Houston and LA have done just that. They've put their money where their mouth is. They've developed from within. They've made the right trades. It just comes from tanking, kind of. And not tanking. Sorry, that's not the right word, even though Houston kind of has tanked.
The Astros did. Yeah. I would say the Astros did.
Yeah, so the Astros kind of won with their tanking, and now they have these guys all under team control. It's all about getting these young guys in your system, having them on your team for control in their arbitration years, and kind of pouncing early, noticing their talent early on, and then kind of lowballing them with their signing. Look, the Braves just signed arguably the best player in baseball right now behind Mike Trout, Ronald Acuna Jr., to like an 8-year, not even $100 million deal, I think. Like, I forget the exact figure, but this guy's 21 years old, gonna possibly, if not probably, be the best player in baseball in a couple years, in a few years, and Trout gets a little older and this guy's hitting his prime, we'll say possibly for now, possibly the best player in baseball. You got him locked up already. You're starting to see it with the Braves. They're right there. They're gonna be the next in line. Maybe the Mets if they make the right moves. They got the payroll. They got some of the guys. Got future MVP candidate Pete Alonso. You can see from the Mets if the Wilpons just start spending money and focus on a culture that wins today instead of all the drama that comes with bad ownership, much like the Dolans. Stay away from that. The Mets are right there too. They've made the World Series this decade. They have a lot of the same guys that helped them got there. The Phillies making the right moves of Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto. They weren't able to put it all together this season, but I just think it comes from, yes, put your money where your mouth is, sign these big guys, but it also comes from your farm system. You have to get guys that are better at evaluating talent. You have to have guys that can speak multiple languages so they can go to Japan, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, you name it. Have scouts go over there, speak their language, and evaluate talent because talent is growing overseas. You see a lot of these powerhouse teams. A lot of their star players, their featured players, are from overseas. Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve. On the Yankees, you got Gleyber Torres, Didi Gregorius. List goes on. Luis Severino, obviously. But Aroldis Chapman, although he's already established in the MLB, Cincinnati Reds did a very good job of discovering his talent and signing him. So, obviously there's still going to be great talent that comes from America, but a lot of it's becoming globalized as well. If you find out about these guys, before a lot of these scouting departments have a chance, you can evaluate their talent and sign them before any other scout can pounce on them. So I think a lot of it comes with globalization and, willingness to spend money and make the big moves, like trading for Garrett Cole, trading for Justin Verlander when he had the chance, and building a roster with veterans that are valuable. With Houston getting Brian McCann in 2017, Carlos Beltran, filling out your roster of veterans. That's all very important in succeeding in baseball today. So, the Atlanta Braves have a chance to threaten the Dodgers for years to come. And I think for the next few years, Tampa's done a very good job of building with what they've had, but nothing. Now it's their turn to break the bank and sign a big free agent instead of always being cheap. Again, they may not have the funds as the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox, but, but you need to have that Tampa Bay and Oakland A's mentality to build a team. Just get the payroll to go with it.
Hell out of the stadiums they're in, by the way, if they want to start attracting some free agents.
Exactly.
Marlins need to burn theirs to the ground and try again. I'm sorry, I had to mini sidetrack rant.
Yeah, I think basically I think that's how you're gonna break the model. Signing these guys, but operating as a small market team from within, evaluating talent instead of breaking the bank for, let's say 10 years ago, Mark Teixeira, AJ Burnett, CC Sabathia. that won us a World Series. That only won us one World Series because after that, the rest of our roster was old, aging veteran guys that would have filled out a baseball card perfectly well in 2005 or 2006. The Yankees of those times didn't have a good farm system, so they weren't able to supplement their high-paid roster with guys who are still talented but may not be able to play every day because they have injuries or they're aging. So, you got to operate as a small market team as well as a big market team, and that's what the Dodgers and the Astros have done.
I would say this, Samir. If you look at the series matchups as they currently stand, I know we've already kind of given our predictions, or at least, what our feeling is. We both agree the Yankees are going to triumph over the Twins. I would say that like I said, I cannot see, I want to, but I don't know if the Rays can pull off the upset. I think if there's a team that can do it, it's them. But I'm going with the Astros So you Astros, Yankees for the ALCS, and then in the NL, you're looking at St. Louis and Atlanta. I'm with you. I think Atlanta's probably got the talent to pull that off, and then LA, Washington, I don't think there's really much to talk about there. I agree with your assessment that LA should be the team that walks with that one. So then we look at, are we both in agreement there? Is it LA, Atlanta, Yankees, Houston?
Yeah.
We're both correct? Okay, so of those 4 teams, I don't want to completely pencil out anybody, but I, again, am having a hard time not predicting LA, Houston. I know that's a complete cop-out. I'm betraying our Yankees fanhood, but and I know you've already kind of talked about how you think that's going to go differently, or how it could go differently. Do you think it goes differently? Are the Yankees in? Do they pull it off? Do they beat Houston? Do they topple a team that's been a bit of their nemesis in the last 2 years, 3 years?
Absolutely.
Or are they going to be same old, where Houston is that juggernaut? And then does Atlanta have enough? I know you said in a few years they could be right there with them, and I'm kind of with you on that. I know Atlanta's been building for the future for a while, and they're starting to see that pay off. But can they miraculously upset a very loaded LA team?
I think the Braves do have the talent and the ability to pull off that upset against the Dodgers. I think it's going to go more than 4 games. It's going to be. I think the Dodgers do pull it out with their starting pitching and their lineup. I think the Dodgers still find a way out of that series, but it's going to be competitive. I think the Braves are going to get a couple games in there. I think they don't have the starting pitching necessarily, other than really Keuchel and maybe Soroka, to get out of that series. They might match up well with the Dodgers 1 and 2, Kershaw, Ryu, and Walker Buehler, you name it. But personally, I think the Dodgers have that series pretty well in control. On the other hand, I think the Yankees are going to beat the Astros for a multitude of reasons.
Talk to me.
I will talk to you. I think the Yankees.
Give me my confidence, please.
Yes. I think the Yankees this is their year. I think the Astros, great baseball team, absolutely, no way around it. I can't make a case for how they suck as a baseball team. You just can't, so I'm not going to take that approach. I'm going to say Zach Greinke has every, he has everything going for him that can make him implode in the playoffs. I don't know how else to name it, but he just can't handle the pressure. In the postseason, I think we've mentioned this on a previous episode, but I will reiterate when Zach Greinke was pitching for the Diamondbacks rather. Even though Zach Greinke was a part of a very stacked Dodgers rotation with Clayton Kershaw at one point. For all you youngsters listening, Greinke's not a very well-liked player for many reasons in baseball. For instance, Pat Neshek, reliever of the Philadelphia Phillies at the time. His little boy, is starstruck by these guys. So, Neshek at the All-Star game in 2017, I believe, went up to him and was like, "Hey, man, can you sign an autograph for my kid?" And Greinke was like, "No, I can't do that." That's the type of guy this guy is. This guy is not going to make a little kid's day. Like, I just don't understand the logic, like, turning it down. Like, it's one thing if you're at a game and, like, you yell out, Steph Curry, in a loud arena, and he doesn't answer you. But this was direct human contact. He said, no. That's just, that's not the right thing to do. So, I'm a firm believer is what you put out in the universe eventually comes out and comes back to you. So let's go over 2017. As I pull up his stats. 2017, 2 starts, and a 7.27 ERA. That doesn't necessarily inspire much confidence in me. 10 hits and 8.2 innings of combined baseball. 10 hits. And with that came 7 earned runs. That's troubling to me. Giving up 1 run in the postseason and a certain amount of innings is troubling. But he just doesn't have the stuff to perform in the postseason. 2015 was more favorable to him. 3.29 ERA, 13.2 innings, 11 hits, much more favorable. 2014, one postseason start, gave up no runs. So he's had postseason success before. But his latest postseason tells me that he just doesn't have it like he used to. I mean, the regular season, he could still go out there and throw a gem, because he's that talented of a pitcher. But in Houston this year, pretty solid numbers ever since coming. 10 starts, 3.02 ERA. Very solid pitcher. But you know why he didn't come to the Yankees at the trade deadline? Because he didn't want to be a Yankee. He can't handle the spotlight. So put him out in Yankee Stadium. He will get eaten alive. So, that's one start. I could say that the Yankees are just going to go all over. Now, on the flip side of things, Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander, very dominant pitchers. But what you do is you trot out your two other dominant pitchers, which are none other than James Paxton and Masahiro Tanaka. They are more than capable of matching Ks, matching zeros with these guys. You throw them out there. It becomes, very low-scoring game, in the later innings. The Yankees then have an advantage when they go to their bullpen. The Astros bullpen, just doesn't match up as well with the Yankees.
Right.
So once it becomes a bullpen game, which it will eventually become between these two guys, between their starting pitching, because they're going to throw a lot of pitches. Guys are going to grind out at bats. May not lead to runs, but they're going to force these guys to throw a lot of pitches. The Yankees always force Justin Verlander to throw a lot of pitches. Verlander still puts up zeros against the Yankees, but if you get him out of the game early, that's nothing but good news for the Yankees. The Yankees will then have a chance to feast off that Astros bullpen, and things open up there. The Astros struggled mightily at Yankee Stadium 2 years ago. The Yankees obviously didn't win in Houston, but you can't say that the Yankees didn't at least put up a fight in those Houston games. They didn't look overwhelmed or intimidated by the Houston fans or being in Houston. Instead, the Astros want to get the hell out of there. I remember the Yankees went up 3-2 in that series. The momentum was swinging in their favor, but they just didn't have the personnel to go on the road and get it done. They now have that personnel. So I think Yankee Stadium will prove to be too much for Zach Greinke in particular and the rest of the Astros. I just personally think that the Yankees get out of this thing in 6 games.
Well, to your point too, it's Verlander obviously had that dominant performance against the Yankees in the ALCS back in 2017.
Right.
And then, since then he's been solid in the postseason, but he ran into a little trouble against Boston. And then, as we've alluded to, unfortunately, the Red Sox were just not going to be beaten last year, and that lineup in particular, and they gave him problems in last year's ALCS where he went 1-1 with a 4.50 ERA. Prior to that, he did okay against Cleveland. He was 1-0 in that department, and then the World Series in 2017, a very solid performance in 2 games against the Dodgers, in which he was able, I believe, to secure 2 wins. I might be wrong on that. It might have been 1 win. No, I'm sorry. He was 0-1 with a 1-no decision in the World Series against the Dodgers 2 years ago. So, at the end of the day, Verlander's had some bumps in the road. Garrett Cole, most of his postseason experience prior to last year came with the Pirates. So as you'd imagine, it's not going to be great. He was solid in their very first year after they broke their long drought in 2013 at a 2.45 ERA with a 1-1 record in 2013. Went 0-1 against the Cubs in 2015 with a 7.20 ERA. Then came back last year after a couple years off from postseason pitching, did really well against Cleveland, and then got lit up by Boston in 6 innings. I shouldn't even say lit up, but was touched up for 5 runs, 4 earned against Boston in the ALCS last year. So, both of them have a little bit of a mixed track record in the postseason. I can see where there's potential for some hiccups along the way. I know that the Rays have a decent lineup. It's not what the Yankees lineup is. So the hope I have is if the matchups that we just detailed come to pass, that maybe the Rays grind down that Houston pitching staff just enough where they're a little uncomfortable heading into the Yankees series. Like you mentioned, Greinke would likely be pitching in New York, and that would be, again, that's an area where he specifically said, I don't want to play. I think he even had the conversation with the Yankees saying it's not a good environment for me. We know Zach Greinke's had some off-field demons with substance and drugs and I'm sorry, alcohol, I believe, was the big one, which, you never want to see for anybody. And the other personality things, I don't know if he's got social anxiety. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But at the end of the day, New York is not a place where he likes to play. I don't know what his stats are playing in New York, specifically against the Yankees. I'm not exactly sure. But at the end of the day, Greinke's got a little volatility there just in the sense of, the other two guys I think are the entrenched 1-2, and he's the 3. So we'll see. I'm curious. I know Houston's lineup is really difficult to deal with. But if the Yankees can go toe-to-toe with anybody, I'm not saying if, they can go toe-to-toe with anybody with any lineup in the league, the Yankees can match. And they've done it in games this year where they've had, like we said, that 10-11 game or 11-10 game, whichever the final score was against Minnesota. We've seen high instances of them winning some shootouts that would rival some football scores this season. So, I'm still, it's hard for me to pick the Yankees, but of course I want to. My thought, Samir, is this. I think both the Yankees and the Braves are going to give fights in the respective championship series. I think at the end of the day, I think it's another year where the Dodgers prevail and head to the big dance, and I think it's another year where the Astros top the Yankees. However, I'm going to preface it with this. I think, one, the Astros will win the World Series. I don't know. I always tend to bet against West Coast teams in the championship games. I don't know why that is. I don't have any bias towards the West Coast. I have family on the West Coast. I just don't know. I mean, maybe it's just I'm just jaded from seeing the Rams lose to the Patriots last year in a horrible Super Bowl, and I've seen it in the Dodgers and Astros before. I'm saying because reboots are so popular and sequels are so popular nowadays, I'm going to say it'll be a replay of 2017. I think the Astros will edge the Dodgers. I think it'll be a good series, but I think the Astros will take it. And then next year will be a 90s reboot, which is also very popular, where the Yankees take on the Atlanta Braves. I'm putting it down now, even though I have a lot of concerns about the Yankees offseason. One way or another, I think the Yankees get there next year. I think the young upstart Braves will get them, and just like it happened in the 90s, I think the Yankees will knock the Braves off. So I'm going way ahead with my projections, but this year I'm still, and I know it's unoriginal, and I know it's me picking chalk, but I want to believe in my heart of hearts the Yankees will do it, and I want to be wrong, and I've been wrong so much with sports this year in my predictions. I'm going to predict the Astros for that reason, so I can be wrong, and the Yankees can pull it off, and I don't care who they play. If the Yankees make the World Series, I'm picking them, but I think this year is not the year as much as I want it to be. And as much as I like your argument for saying that it is, Samir, I'm going with the Astros. Unfortunately, I don't want to see it. I'm tired of them already, even though they're still a pretty young team, other than a couple of their obvious key pitchers. And that's the one good thing is you might see very quickly the Astros turn over, because if Garrett Cole leaves, like many believe he will, and then Verlander and Greinke are both older, all of a sudden the Astros might not be the juggernaut they are in a year or two. It could even be next year. But their lineup is good, and they have some great young stars on the offensive end of things. But end of the day, Samir, that's where I'm at the moment. I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope the Yankees, like you said, they've got a lot of character in their clubhouse. They play really well for one another, and they have the intangible it factor, I think. But I'm just worried that pitching staff is not going to hold up over multiple series against multiple high-end lineups. That's my concern. I think the bullpen can. I don't know what happens in 7-game series when either you're pitching your top 3 on 2 days rest, or 3 days rest rather, or you're using an opener for one of those games and just hoping to God that it works, that Chad Green shows up, or that someone out of the bullpen, maybe if CC returns later in the postseason, can hold up for an inning or two and then let your bullpen take over. But again, I'm snake bit. I'm snake bit by the fact that the Yankees can never seem to put together an elite pitching staff up front, starting wise. I know they've had a couple of years where they've been in that category, but for the most part, under Cashman, it's been a struggle. And I think this year it bites them. Next year they'll learn. If I have my way, they'll bring in Garrett Cole in the offseason, and then maybe even find a way for Hal to go over the luxury tax and say screw it, just like his dad would, and get Didi back and bring back some of those character guys I mentioned earlier, and the Yankees will be a force to be reckoned with, and the team that we want them to be.
I think Didi Gregorius has earned his keep in New York. You have to do everything you can to keep in pinstripes. You have to go over the luxury tax. This is the New York Yankees. It's not the Cincinnati Reds. You have to do everything you can to keep Didi in pinstripes. I don't care. Go over the luxury tax. Boston Red Sox have done it. So why can't you do it? That's why Boston has been winning over the last 15 years, because they're willing to spend money. But at the same time, they're also good at scouting. So got to take a page out of their book. But that's another topic for another day. Tim, it's not unreasonable to pick Houston in this World Series, but I don't know. I just think it's the Yankees' year, man. I do. The Astros have just all season long been beating up on all the bad teams in that division. They were able to feast off the Angels. They were able to feast off the A's. They were able to feast off the Mariners, So a lot of their stats are a little bit inflated, whereas the Yankees, they beat up on the Orioles this year. I'll say that. But Toronto has been a thorn on their side this year.
That's
Toronto,
true.
They have the Yankees' number, relatively speaking, being a lesser team. And also, they had to face Boston, not a bad third-place team, in Tampa. Even though the Astros have had their trouble with the A's this season as well. But I think when you look at it in the big picture of things, the Astros had a much easier time beating up on teams like the Angels and the Mariners, because those teams just have nothing going for them right now. So, a lot of the numbers are a little bit, I feel like, inflated. The Astros did narrowly beat the Yankees in the season series this year, but one of those wins from the Astros side of things narrowly came because, on a 4-game set, it's hard for a team to sweep you in 4 games. This is difficult, I feel like a team generally will figure you out at a certain point in the series. We'll take 1 game from the series. But in a 3-game set, it's much easier to sweep. So the Astros essentially gained an extra game on the Yankees this season because, that was the one series the Yankees had this year where it went 4 games. Generally speaking as well, I feel like just collected. Don't most teams have kind of a 4-game set with another team?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically saying that it happened to be at home for the Yankees. They got 3 out of 4, but I feel like in Houston, if opposites were reversed, the Yankees would have stolen at least 1 game in Houston. But whatever happened. I'm nitpicking a little bit, getting too deep into things, but personally, I just think that the chemistry is there for the Yankees. I think it's been long overdue. Gotta get one for Didi and CeCe. If this is it for Didi, he'll go out there more motivated because Didi said he would play like shit during the regular season. So he might be on a mission. But hey, our predictions are set.
Yeah.
For them to go out there and prove you wrong and prove me right.
I hope they do. I want to be wrong. Who do you have in the NL? Dodgers?
Dodgers, yes.
Okay. So Yankees over Dodgers in how many games in the series?
You know what? I think that'll be a quick 5-game series because
I like that.
Because I like that. The Yankees went into LA this year on a mission. They just didn't look phased. Took 2 out of 3. I just personally think that the Dodgers just don't have what it takes to beat the Yankees.
I would say this. I think, man, and I know there were some real good lineups in the 90s, and I'm not just speaking on the home runs, just as far as batting average, some of the team numbers and whatnot, but this has got to be the most dominant Yankee lineup I can remember. And I know the early 2000s had some good ones, obviously, as well, with some of the money they brought in for those teams. And, I'd say this Yankees lineup is as resilient a lineup as I can remember. It just seems every single game, even if it's a high-scoring game, even if there's a big lead for the other team, the Yankees' bat's kind of awake. Sometimes it's too little too late, but they still put up 4 runs in the last couple innings and lose by a few. Obviously, that hasn't happened too many times this year. I will say the one thing I do have faith in is that the Yankees lineup is going to bring it. And I think they're going to be a really hard out on no matter what pitching staff. You mentioned the Astros having the weak division opponents. I mean, how many times did we see the Seattle Mariners almost no-hit, including the no-hitter that the Angels had against them as a combined team? I think I want to say there was at least 5 separate times, including that game, where there was a near no-hitter, and it was broken up by the Mariners later in the game. But I want to say on 5 separate occasions the Mariners were almost no-hit. It only happened once, and I think it was the combined team one. Maybe,
yeah, that just speaks volumes to how poor that division was. The only
to be fair, the Orioles were horrendous, and the Yankees got 17 wins against the Orioles.
Well, yeah.
Thank God, because they struggled last year against a horrendous Orioles team. And you did mention, and I agree, the Blue Jays seem to bring it against the Yankees every time. And that's a team we also have to watch out for. I've heard Red Sox fans say it. I've heard Yankees fans say it. Man, that core of players with the legacy core with the Blue Jays, you got Bichette Jr., Vladdy Jr., and Biggio's kid all playing together in Toronto. That is a little scary in a couple of years. They need some other pieces up there as well, but the North might rise in baseball, man. I think they used up all their good juju in basketball and let Kawhi go, but they got it done. Now I think the Blue Jays, maybe in 2 or 3 years, are going to be a force in the AL East and in the AL and Major League Baseball in general. That team's going to have some studs.
One thing about Toronto is that they just are never too bad.
Right.
They're always kind of in it, but they then get their pieces together and then they make runs for it. You'll never see them bottom out. They're always going to be a tough team to play. No matter what. I don't know what it is, but they're just a tough team.
Toronto's an attractive place to live. It is expensive. The taxes there are very high, but it's a beautiful city. I mean, I see it all the time in hockey. There's more pull in hockey because Toronto is one of the major cities in Canada and major hotbeds for hockey. So in baseball and in basketball, doesn't have the same allure for a lot of American athletes or international athletes that come in and be big free agents. But I think the Blue Jays, I know this is a bit of a sidetrack, but I think they're going to become a destination because of that young core they have. Now, their payroll isn't as large as, say, the Yankees and Red Sox, but they might bump it up a little bit in the near future. I could see it conceivably if they start living up to the expectations that are going to be put down for them pretty soon, because that team, man, they got some legit talent. But in any case, Samir, I'm really hoping you're right. I think the Yankees, I would not rule them. I'm not going to be shocked if they prove me wrong. I am really hoping they do prove me wrong. But I'm very excited. I think at the end of the day, I'm very excited because this is a really entertaining Yankees team to watch. Even when I can't watch them that often out here in Nebraska because I'm not in the Yankees market, I get to listen to them quite a bit on my phone. And John Sterling and Susan Waldman and just getting a feel for who they've been this year. It is an exciting group, and I think you alluded to it, their mental fortitude and chemistry is legitimate. And I think that's usually the case for most playoff teams, but that can be, even if it's intangible, that can be a deciding factor because they're a team that will not quit. And I'm not expecting any of these other teams to either, but I like the fortitude of the Yankees group. And if their pitching can just outperform a little bit, and a lot of them were better down the stretch, if they can outperform what they did for a good chunk of the regular season, all bets are off. But we'll see. I think you're right. I think the level of competition might have inflated a few things for a few teams. Again, the Yankees aren't exactly immune to that argument either, given that they did destroy the Orioles on a regular basis. Gleyber Torres is a wanted man in Baltimore because he has literally murdered the Orioles organization. But at the end of the day, I'm excited. I'm ready to see the Yankees make a deep run. I would love to see them back in the World Series. It's been a long time. I know we're a little spoiled as Yankees fans saying that, but even so, it's been a decade. I'd love to see them back in that situation. I'd love to see just the atmosphere we know so well in the Bronx is special in that type of an environment, a World Series game there's not quite many other places on earth like it. When New York baseball is in postseason baseball, especially the biggest of postseason gauntlets. So I'm excited, Samir. I'm excited to be wrong. I've been wrong almost all year about everything, and I'm excited to be wrong again.
Well, I'm hoping you're wrong, because I could be wrong too. But one thing I was right about in sports this year.
About everything. So I'm hoping that.
One thing I was right about in sports this year is Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving ending up in Brooklyn. So maybe I'm right again about my favorite team.
All of it up, Samir. No, except that's the thing is if we're I can't say that's strictly it's Brooklyn juju, Brooklyn mojo. It's not Manhattan mojo or Bronx mojo. Sorry. That was used up in that department. So I think we're safe. I think the superstitious gods aren't going to look at that as the same thing. I don't think they're going to take from us because it's a different borough. So we know the Bronx is starving for some victories, man, and victories in the sense of World Series victories. It's been too long, and we're too accustomed to those trophies. I'm flexing. I'm doing my Yankees.
27, baby.
We lost all of our non-Yankee fan audience. Oh, man. No, I'm excited. I think there's a chance. I absolutely believe there's a chance. And I love the guys in that clubhouse. And I really do hope, for what you said earlier, for the Brett Gardner, for CeCe Sabathia, I hope not just for Didi, because I think Didi, I need him to be back. He's my guy. I think outside of Judge, he's my favorite player on the Yankees. I love Gleyber Torres. There's some great players and easy guys to root for, but Didi is probably the easiest to root for besides Judge for me. I want to see him get a ring with the Yankees. I think he deserves that.
Absolutely. Well stated. So, go Yankees.
Let's go Yankees. I want to get one more opinion from you, Samir. I know we touched it before we jumped on the air. Is in fact Saquon Barkley an Avenger? Because if he comes back, Pat Shermer keeps saying things, man. While we've been on the air, he's saying he is not ruling. He said it again. He's not ruling Saquon Barkley out for this weekend. I think it would be insane to play on a high ankle sprain 1 week after you sustain that. But I wouldn't rule it out just because I've seen Saquon do some special things out there. And hey, Dave Gettleman's been right more than I've been right, which is a shocking statement because I don't trust Dave Gettleman with much. But hey, he's right so far on Danny Dimes, and maybe he's right that Saquon can just transcend everything. And hey, I would bet against seeing Saquon take the field this week. I don't think he should. I think he should wait at least another 2 weeks. But what do you think? Is Saquon tossing the rock this week? Is Pat Bauer's fantasy team rising to the next level as Saquon returns, or is it going to be a little while?
I think it's going to be at least another week. I think the Giants would be foolish to run him out there this week because get him healthy. He's your future.
Yes.
I saw an opinion from Brandon Tierney. I respect his radio show, I respect his platform, but he comes from the older crowd a little bit, where he's like, if you're cleared to play, you play. I don't think they really take into account how coming back from an injury too soon can end up hurting your career. I think we're the generation that plays a little bit more smarter. We look more long term. So like, you're healthy. Go out there and play football. Now we're like, we like to play it a little bit safer. We want our money. We want to build a legacy for the long term. One game, is not going to matter in the long grand scheme of things. Play it safe, So I think sit him out this week, maybe next week.
I stubbed my toe and I have trouble standing up. So I don't know how a guy with a high ankle sprain is going to play football at the NFL level, let alone get off crutches. So I know I'm not a great standard for that. My toughness is well below average. But, man, if he's out there, I would call that the most astonishing individual feat of recovery that I have ever seen in my life. And I saw Adrian Peterson come back from, a torn ACL in 9 months. Well, that's typically a 12-month injury. It might have even been shorter than that when he won the MVP that way back in, I think, 2012. I think he blew out his ACL and was, that's 11, 12-month recovery. He was back out there in 9 months and had an MVP season. So that's the only thing I can think of even comparable to Saquon running on a high ankle sprain. So I hope you're right. I hope that they do play it a little cautious with him. I think he's too good to run out there this early. The Giants are overachieving right now. They're beating the expectations at the moment, and Daniel Jones looks really good. So, hey, I understand the need to want to be competitive, but hey, your guy Wayne Gallman did pretty well there last week. So I'd say no rush at all. No rush at all for Saquon. Let him recover. Let him get back on that leg healthy and get back to work when he's ready to go.
And the Vikings are also kind of a sinking ship as we speak, so this could be another easy win even without Saquon. So,
Right.
let Wayne Gallman go out there, let him do his thing. Let Daniel Jones, he can pick up some yards and rushing as we've seen.
Right.
Let them go out there, let them do their thing. You're home too. I think, honestly, this is going to be an easy win for the Giants anyway.
Yeah, you mentioned it. The Vikings are kind of in a tailspin, and they're having issues. And
please, Stephon Diggs, go away. Please go to a better team. Make my fantasy team better.
Get ready for him to score 35 touchdowns with Tom Brady in the next 10 weeks when they would trade for him. Even though the Vikings are adamant they're not going to trade him. That can change real fast. Mike Zimmer's an old school guy. He's kind of you're either with me or against me coach. And I do agree with Stephon Diggs. He needs the ball more than they're getting it to him. I mean, he's a damn good number 2 receiver. And Adam Thielen's already been saying he needs the ball more, and he's a great number 1 receiver. And Kirk Cousins is just letting them down over there. So I don't like necessarily players going public with those types of complaints. I understand it, but I don't like it. I mean, but at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think the Vikings, though they have a good defense, they're in a tough spot right now. So you don't need Saquon's leg to be risked for that game in order to win it. I think as long as Daniel Jones plays like he's been playing, Giants can pull that one off. Is it in New York? The Meadowlands? Is that being played at MetLife?
The game this weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So that's even more reason for me to say you're at home. Let Wayne Gallman do the job.
Exactly.
I don't know who's playing John Krell in fantasy football. I'm willing to let John Krell get a win with Wayne Gallman on his roster in fantasy football if it keeps Saquon preserved another week. So, and his career gets to go longer, and we all get to watch Saquon go a little bit more. I prefer that and allow John Krell to have some fun with Wayne Gallman rather than seeing Saquon hurt because he tried to get back too early.
You mean Jonathan Krell?
Yep, Jonathan, the one and only.
It's not
Jonathan. Don't call him Jonathan. He'll let you know about that. It's either John Krell or Johnny. What did he call himself? What did he call it? The Johnny Special was his dance in college, if I recall. The Krell Special is his NHL cheese move, NHL video games. But we'll have to get him on here one of these days so he can defend himself. We have lots of sports things we have to bring up with him and charge him with for being a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, he decided to be lame. Yeah, we'd be a Cowboys fan in New York.
His Cowboys are looking pretty good, unfortunately. So, but that's probably how we'll get him on. We'll pull the old bait and switch on him. We'll tell him we're going to talk about how well the Cowboys are doing, and then we'll blast him. We'll put him on blast and trick him into all kinds of shenanigans. Coming soon.
Well, on that note, very successful show today, I would say. I don't necessarily agree with your World Series prediction, but we'll see. Hopefully, my faith in the Yankees propels them to the 28th World Championship, but we'll see. So
I hope you're right too, Samir. I hope I am wrong, and I've been wrong all year in sports, so I'm hoping by making the wrong choice, the right thing happens.
Well, in this case, I hope you're wrong, because
perfect.
Be wrong this year because it'll lead to glory. It'll lead to a parade, and a lot of other things that come with that.
Yes. Well, here's to champagne and parades in the near future.
Here it is to it. That's what our episode will be dedicated to.
Thanks for 28.
Sorry?
I said great for 28.
Great for 28. Well, on that note, if you've stuck around as long as you did, we thank you. And let's go Yankees, and we'll be back soon.